But I assure you, you lift the curtain and centralized, just-in-time, mega facilities are in a very non-resilient, a very vulnerable spot right now.
Here at Liberty and Finance, we're licensed brokers with Miles Franklin. We are standing by the inventory, ready to make sure you get what you need, even into the wee hours of night and on weekends, because preparedness doesn't stop. Call us 1-888-81-LIBERTY. That's 1-888-815-4237.
Welcome back to Liberty and Finance. We have a very well-known guest who has spoken widely, authored widely, traveled widely, hosted conferences, attended and taught at conferences, trains dozens and dozens of interns and other students, and serves the community surrounding their farm. This is Joel Salatin. He's the co-founder of Polyface Farms in the Shenandoah Valley of Virginia. He joins us again this May 10th, 2022, to talk on the very present and vital topic of food security. Joel, thanks for coming back on Liberty and Finance.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure to be with you.
We have interviewed you almost from the beginning of our channel, back when it was called Reluctant Preppers. Gosh, we must have had a dozen or more interviews through the months and years in between. And folks, I would strongly encourage you. We have a Joel Salatin playlist on our website to go take a look at that and binge to your heart's content. We have such topics as feeding your family on 0 acres and folks, this ain't normal, and everything I want to do is illegal, and a whole bunch of other very eye-opening talks about how regulations are made by big agri. They scale up, they don't scale down, and they squeeze out small-time producers, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So creative ways, always with good humor, always with an eye towards what's practical, common sense, and in the best interest of the people. Very, very much recommend that you check out any interview with Joel Salatin in our channel. Just go under Liberty and Finance, Joel Salatin, boom, you'll find all kinds of greatness. Right now, Joel, we have in our face some serious concerns that people have about how they're going to get food, how people are going to feed their families over the next, who knows, months, year, quarter, year or two. We've had the President of the United States come out last month and say we've got a food shortage coming and it's going to hurt. We've had revelations come out that in the geopolitical conflict in the Ukraine and so on, that's the breadbasket of Europe in many ways, and the source of fertilizer for agribusiness all over the world, et cetera. I'm sure you'll point out some more examples of reasons for current concern about the availability, the cost of food going forward. But we wanted to give you a chance to talk about what's new and present as far as concerns that people should have, why we should take this seriously now in particular and take action. And I wanted to offer up my wife Melody and myself as a example of a couple who are looking for a new place. We're looking to relocate. We've got it narrowed down to like a general area of a particular state, and we're looking at different types of properties there. And when we get to that part where you're going to start talking about, well, if you have the option of doing some things for yourself, it depends on what kind of land resources or water resources or whatever you've got that might determine possibilities that are open to you as an individual or as a family. Then I'd like to offer ourselves as a test case and toss out a couple examples to make it real. But first, if I could just unleash you on the topic of why is, other than the obvious reason food security is important because you got to feed your family on a daily basis, but why now? Why is it becoming so pressingly clear that now is a time that people really need to be paying attention to this?
Yeah, I think there's obviously the obvious thing that the petroleum is going up. I mean, Biden has. The current climate in the culture is very anti-petroleum. So there's basically a anathema against any kind of petroleum. And I'm not a petroleum lover. I'm just pointing out that this is creating petroleum price spikes worldwide, and chemical fertilizers are made from petroleum, and high high energy inputs. And so fertilizer has gone up, depending on what kind, 300 to 400% in the last year. So that's tremendously driving up costs. And then I think one of the things that people don't appreciate, perhaps people who are working in a big business maybe do, but what's happened since COVID is a plethora of new human resource internal. These are not necessarily government regulations, but they're internal protections against litigation. That somebody won't sue. I got sick because the company didn't, have a proper quarantine procedure, that sort of thing. And so what's happening is that the bigger the business, the bigger the outfit, the more employees, the more people, the more vulnerable it is to all of these new employee, kind of employee seeking redress or trying to find problems. And so very small businesses like ours, I mean, we got 25 people that earn their salary here. I don't wake up in the morning wondering, oh no, I wonder if somebody's going to find a problem over in Sector B and sue us for not, sending those two people home last week because they had the sniffles. I mean, name your thing. And what this is doing, it is just simply grinding. It's grinding efficiency down in big business. You don't see it that much in small business, but the bigger the business, the more inefficient it's becoming. That runs counter to the business narrative up until now. And so for example, large slaughterhouses, large packing plants, large tomato places. I pose the question. I say, would we have had the food problems that we had through COVID, supply issues, if instead of having in the United States, if instead of having 150 to 200 mega, 5,000 employee packing cannery, places, if instead we had 150,000 small 5 to 10 employee neighborhood abattoirs and canneries and packing plants and things, would we have had the glitch that we had? And I suggest that we would have been far more resilient had we had thousands and thousands of smaller outfits, just because the chances of getting the virus are much greater when you have concentrations of people versus having them spread out. And so smaller outfits are less susceptible to all these issues, from everything from getting sick to having disgruntled employees who make the business owners not sleep at night because what if they get upset with me, and so all of these issues are impacting the centralized food system that has been created over the last 4 or 5 decades in the name of efficiency and just-in-time inventorying. I heard, if you read business journals right now, it's interesting that the just-in-time inventory phrase, just-in-time, has been replaced by just-in-case. Just in case. Well, think of what a difference that makes if you're in shipping and ordering and manufacturing and doing anything. Think of what a difference it makes in your protocols if you move from just in time to just in case. Instead of being as lean as possible, now you want warehouses full of inputs. You want to invest in stuff before the price goes up, those kinds of things. I mean, even in our farm this spring, we sunk first time ever. We sunk a bunch of money to prepay for grain out about 6 months, because we worked out a deal with our feed mill. Said if you prepay, we won't raise the price until your prepayment runs out. We figure we're going to save $15,000 to $20,000 over that 6-month period by prepaying for all our feed. So that's unprecedented. Nobody ever had to do that before, and so all of those things are just wrenching and glitching and jerking the entire food system around, and a lot of this is happening kind of out of the limelight. You don't see it or read about it every day, but I assure you, you lift the curtain and centralized, just-in-time, mega facilities are in a very non-resilient, a very vulnerable spot right now.
We've heard beyond that. We've heard you're talking about basically vulnerability that can come from within. We've also heard that there's been a possibly unprecedented number of fires, plane crashes, other types of unexpected closures and disasters at food plants around. In fact, I think Tucker Carlson on Fox News did a story about this a couple weeks ago. Do you think that that's just coincident with, okay, there's interest in it, let's talk about it, and this kind of stuff has always been going on? I am aware of that, and I don't know what to think of it. I try to not be I try not to use the word conspiracy, just because as soon as you say that word, then you've kind of lost credibility. I do think that there is a fraternity of ideas, that there is that there's an orthodoxy that drinks the Kool-Aid. Okay, I do that, but malevolent conspiracy, I'm sure it happens somewhere, someplace, but I honestly don't know what to make of it. It certainly is intriguing, but there again, I mean, I remember, back after 9/11, as a farmer, we were getting constant bulletins about the vulnerability of what if the terrorists come in and put cyanide in your chicken water, at a Tyson chicken farm, to taint things. There again, though, as a small farm, if you're not a million bird facility, you're far less vulnerable because you're not a high value target, and we live here. We live here. This is not owned by some absentee person that hires some low paid people to go check things out once a day, and so the vulnerability and so that's certainly an interesting thing. What's exciting for us here is that since we don't buy any chemical fertilizer and all of our feedstock is grown within about 50 miles from farmers that we know that are loyal to our food, our input chain, the price, Ukrainian wheat or fertilizer from Russia doesn't affect us at all. And so as we move into the phase of, okay, so you got me scared now, I'm concerned. What you're looking for in your food supply is you're trying to find producers, you're trying to find outfits, that are nested in the community, that are small, so they're not big targets, and who are running on biology and photosynthesis, sun energy, and biology, i.e. compost, the carbon cycle, rather than the chemical cycle. And so as you start vetting your supply chain, those are the kinds of things you're looking for. And I think those are going to be the new kind of the new buying parameters that at least thinking people, I mean, obviously that's a minority. Thinking people that is a minority, but thinking people are going to start vetting on those boundaries. Right. I mean, it does actually give you a commercial advantage. When my wife and I, when we lived in Minnesota, we went out of principle. When the option was offered to us by our electric company, we went 100% wind source, even though it cost us significantly more on our monthly bill. We said, yep, use all units of our supply should come from wind source power. People can argue about whether that's a good idea or not, but the point I'm about to make is it cost us more to do it. Within a couple of years, there was a huge spike in fuel prices, and the utility company started applying a surcharge to everybody else's bill who didn't opt for wind source power as we had done. And so suddenly we were the cheapest house on the block to have power rather than the most expensive house on the block. And it seems like, in a sense, you would find, or other producers like yourselves who have used natural methods, non-chemical methods, locally sourced, et cetera, are finding that you're much more resilient to these supply chain disruptions, geopolitical stresses, whatever, and actually come out not only just faring better for yourselves, but also being able to serve your customers with a better value product, because you went, quote unquote, the old fashioned way, or the tried and true way, or the less radical, expensive, experimental way. That was
right. Well, listen. We've been in this a long, long time, and have consistently been accused of being, elitist and whatever, uncaring about poor people and that sort of thing. And this really came home to me. I started connecting these dots that I've just spoken to you about. The other day, I was in the store, and a lady kind of came in, and I heard her kind of gasp. She was in front of we sell a lot of meat, and that's what we're in. We're in that business, and I said, is there something wrong? Can I help you? And she said, oh my goodness. She said, your I think it was sirloin steak is $9 a pound, and Costco is $16 a pound. And it just all of these new disturbing things, it struck me. I mean, Tyson, in the last 12 months, Tyson's raised their beef prices 32%. We don't need to raise ours 32%. We run on grass. We don't buy any chemical fertilizer. We don't buy any pesticides. We use very little petroleum because we're moving the cows around, and we're not planting annual crops for them. And so as a result, we've raised prices some just because, fuel's up and things like that. But, for us, a 10% increase is plenty with inflation and the way things are. 32% is unbelievable. And so I think that just speaks directly to all of these things that we've just discussed, in that, when you're in disturbing, when you're being cast up on disturbing waters and whatever, the shoals of life, you want to be in a speedboat. You don't want to be in an aircraft carrier. And I am very, very thankful that we're a speedboat and not an aircraft carrier. So for the first time, we're hearing, business people start talking about resilience and not efficiency. Efficiency has always been the holy grail in business. So it's the smallness that creates nimbleness to be able to handle these new vulnerabilities that are plaguing the great big outfits. And so we feel like we've been preaching resilience. Yes, we want to be efficient, but if you're not at first resilient, then eventually there's nothing to be efficient about, because you've lost.
Yeah, you don't live to play another day. That's right.
Yeah, you live to try another day to be efficient, if at least you're resilient. And so yeah, these are pretty exciting times, that's for sure.
So we've established that these are concerning times. People need to be paying attention to where their food's coming from. You've talked about some general principles that echo ones you've spoken about in the past, which is locally sourced, the more you can do yourself, etc. Can you talk to us briefly about categories of situations that people may find themselves in that make them have a different strategy to a survivable and thrivable method? One would be maybe people who find themselves like in an apartment or condominium in an urban setting. Another is people who find themselves in a larger, they have some land, but it's in a suburban HOA type setting where there's restrictions against gardening. You've touched on both of those in the past, and we'll just do that again. But then I want to pose a couple of settings for you, and that is if people are able to move into a setting that's outside of city limits, and I'd like you to contrast in that case either like a 1 acre or almost more than a half an acre to 1 acre lakeshore homestead versus for example, a 5 acre lakeshore homestead? Because those are two real life examples that my wife and I are looking at. So can we start with the urban apartment / condominium with no land?
Sure. So, if you're in a situation where you are completely dependent on exterior supply for your food, that sends you down one path. And I would simply say on that path, you are looking for resilient supply. And that means you're looking for farms that don't buy fertilizer, that run on carbon and compost. You're looking for smaller outfits that are less dependent on distant inputs. I mean, goodness, here at our farm, we even have a sawmill. So we don't even, what's happened to the price of lumber recently. So we're actually lumber independent. If we want to build something, we just go out and cut down a tree and mill the log into lumber. And so, those kinds of resiliency things are what you're looking for your produce, your meat, your dairy, that sort of thing. And is that going to take some time? Yes. So just assume that you're going to cancel your Netflix subscription, for 3 or 4 months, and this is going to be your pastime. You're going to invest your time. Doesn't take much money, but you're going to invest your time in finding and then building a relationship. It's just fascinating to me, the new phrases. I mentioned the one just in time inventory to just in case. Another one that just happened to us. We had some folks in the store and they said, look, we have home insurance, flood insurance, life insurance, health insurance. We need food insurance. That's the first time I ever heard that phrase, food insurance. Who would have thought in the United States that people would be, normally you have insurance for something that you're afraid you're going to lose, right? And so when somebody actually comes in, I mean, these are professional, college educated, degreed people saying, we need food insurance. So actually at our farm now, I'm actually putting attention on trying to conceive of what would food insurance look like. Can we create an animal, I mean a figurative animal. Can we create a model, a template, a platform that would offer something like food insurance, where
close as you can get to an uninterruptible food supply, like there's uninterruptible power supplies or whatever.
Yeah, but basically you come to a point where we would say if we can feed ourselves, if we're eating, you're eating, that kind of thing. Obviously you can't have a carte blanche thing. I mean, if there is no food, there's no food, but you can at least make it to where, it's first class. It's top priority. So those kinds of mechanisms, believe me, if you're in an apartment and you go to a farmer and you say, I'll tell you what, I'll pay you $500 a year to be your number one person, or maybe $1,000 a year, okay, to be your number one person. Don't give me any price breaks. I'm not asking for anything. This is just to let you know that I want first dibs. and believe me, I can't imagine any farmer in the country that wouldn't sit up, salute, and take notice to such an idea. So that by the way, Dunnigan, is a brand new idea that I've had in the last month as I've been toying with this food insurance idea, and so you heard it here first.
Well, yeah, it turns the whole thing upside down, because usually you would expect people approaching food producers to say, I will, the thing I'm trying to establish with you is I will provide you a market for your product, or I will provide you a minimum price that you can count on, or something like that. Whereas here, this is saying, I will be your top I'll be your top bidder.
Yeah, absolutely. It's I want seat 1A at the bulkhead first class. And I'm willing to put it down and pay for it. And
when my wife and I were on an ill-fated 20th anniversary trip to Mexico, we didn't realize until we were on the departure gate at the airport that Hurricane Emily was heading towards the Cancun, the Yucatan Peninsula. And at our resort, which was supposed to be this 4.5-star resort, the accommodations quickly became less than 1 star as we're lying on a concrete floor at the Cancun Convention Center and hearing glass breaking out in the hall and so on as we were in. But the interesting thing was, prior to the arrival, we had about 36 hours notice after we arrived at the resort. There was a meeting where they were announcing, okay, guys, this serious hurricane's coming. It might miss us, but if it doesn't, we're going to all have to evacuate, la, la, la. And there was a range of responses on the part of the individuals affected. Those like us just went along like in the herd to the evacuation center, and wherever they were going to take us, we were going to go. Another couple said to the travel agent who was next to the person who was giving the announcement is, we need out of here right now. We'll pay anything it takes right now. Get us on the next flight. And he and his wife were on a plane that afternoon. They were out of there ahead of the hurricane. Wow. So, it's okay. Go ahead. I interrupted you, but I feel like I lived through that before.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's a great. It's a great explanation of, look, money isn't everything, but money is something, and you pay it forward. If the folks who prepare and pay forward are going to get first crack. So that's kind of my thoughts on the folks who are constrained, not being able to do much for yourself or completely dependent on somebody else. Then you move into the kind of the urban, the suburban setting, where you might have a postage stamp yard. So in those kinds of settings, and a lot of those are, a little quarter-acre yard, that sort of thing. Well, you and I have talked about, you brainstormed all the things that you can do there, from a solarium on the south side of the house that can be done very, very cheaply. And that gives you winter cool hardy produce like cabbage and lettuce and kale and things, broccoli throughout the winter, and gives you some passive solar heat on warm days. And then you move the yard from ornamental landscaping to edible landscaping. So imagine all your shrubs and trees and flowers convert to edible plants instead. And it doesn't take any more room or effort to have an apple tree or a pear tree that actually produces than it does, for example, a Bartlett pear that does nothing but produce flowers. And so you're thinking edible landscaping, and then of course, some garden beds. You can put a lot of stuff in small spaces if you create beds and do kind of the square foot gardening thing and stack things up, high stuff, low stuff, and then you can have a couple of chickens. Don't ask, don't tell, just do it. My favorite suburban animal pretty much is a chicken, if you can keep it, if it's legal, or you keep it under the radar or whatever. But another one is a rabbit. Rabbits are quiet, and they don't make any noise, and pound for pound, rabbit produces more meat per pound of feedstock input than any other animal. They're incredibly productive, and so and the processing is real easy. You don't have to pluck them. You just skin them. So all you need is a little loop of string on a porch pole, back porch, and you're in business for the butchery. So there are lots of things that you can do if you even just have a postage stamp. In fact, I've written a book, Polyface Micro, that actually talks about how to have chickens and rabbits in a Manhattan apartment. It doesn't take any more room than an entertainment center or a large aquarium, or even a fairly large dog kennel. And I like dogs, I like cats, but look, if food is really an issue, get rid of the dog and put in some chickens, and they will eat all your kitchen scraps and give you eggs to eat. That's better than spending, $100 a month on dog food and having poop that you can't even use. The chicken manure, it's great. You can side dress your plants with it and feed it to an earthworm bed or whatever. So, what you're doing is you're actually thinking about practical, functional food production, as opposed to as an integrated component of your life, rather than food being something segregated from daily thought. Somebody else does that. It's out on the shelf all the time. I don't have to think about that. You're actually having to put attention on that. And in a day when right now, I think the statistic is that the average American male between 25 and 35 years old spends 20 hours a week playing video games. Don't tell me there's not enough time to play with some of this stuff. A beehive on your roof, hanging their wonderful urban containers, container gardening, and PVC pipes where you pack them with compost. They've got pockets in them, and you can have fresh herbs on your porch. So there are spaces and places in and around the home that you can use in a suburban setting that can produce most, if not all, of your food.
Another thing you talked to us about in the past was reconsidering our relationship with raindrops. And I thought you were going to say one of the things you can do in a suburban setting is capture rain from your downspouts and store that up.
Yeah, well, we've talked about that for sure. I mean, again, that's part of disentangling or pulling the plug from the utilities. And so, yeah, you can with a little bit of plumbing changing in your house, you can run gray water, so your shower water, for example, into your toilet, and now suddenly that cuts your water usage in half. And you put in a cistern. You can buy cisterns. They're roughly 80 cents per gallon of storage. That's potable. If you don't care about potable, you can get you can do that as well. But catch all your roof runoff. And if you do a gray water toilet system, then suddenly you can probably get along okay on just the rain that hits your roof. If you're in a 30-inch rainfall area, if you're down in 10 inches, it might be a little bit tough. But those kinds of very simple retrofits can do wonders to creating independence for us from the system, from that system that can either go way up in price and create financial difficulty, or can become fragile in delivery of service. If wheels fall off and things go wonky and the water system goes down, if you're collecting rainwater and you have a buried cistern in your yard, we have where the apprentices live, we have a 15,000 gallon cistern. We collect the roof runoff and put in a 15,000 gallon cistern, and it's it handles a lot of people.
Can we scale up to the options that Melody and I are considering for our new homestead location? One category would be approximately 1 acre, hopefully lakeshore and outside the city limits with no HOA restrictions. The other one would be similar, but further out, and 5 acres. Any big differences that come to mind for you on scope and scale of possibility with that kind of land and resources available?
Yeah. So one of the principles, one of the general principles is the larger the animal. So let's assume we're going to have a garden on both of them, and so if you have 1 acre and you say we're going to grow stuff on, we're going to grow, basically try to hit for like 75% of our food, chances are you're going to have something that's maybe an eighth to a quarter of an acre. So now you're down to 3/4 of an acre. The house takes up some, the garage and whatever takes up some. So in reality, you're down to maybe half an acre. All right. Well, you can't have a sheep, goat, cow. You can't have big stuff, pig, in a half acre. There's just not enough. There's just not enough land to have something like that. Now, you can have a chick. You could have a chicken or chickens. In fact, in a half acre, you could grow all of your own broilers, for example, in a portable shelter. You just allocate a half acre. We grow about 500, a little more, maybe 600 broilers per acre. So, in a half acre yard, you could grow a couple hundred broilers very easily in a portable shelter arrangement. You could certainly have 50 laying hens that would produce eggs for you and enough to sell and make it an economically profitable thing. You could certainly, in that same half acre, raise a dozen turkeys, so that you'd have Thanksgiving, Christmas, and again enough to sell to friends or neighbors, or barter to your acupuncturist and give to your small engine mechanic or whatever. Maybe anyway, you get what I'm saying. And so the small stock generally, as you move down in the small acreage, you're just pretty limited into your plants and your small animals. The big difference is you go up to 5 acres. Now suddenly, you could actually have a milk cow. You could have, you could raise a couple pigs, and I would do that if I had 5 acres. Depending on what the terrain, the land was like, you could either rotate them around in small electric fence paddocks and move them every 5 to 12 days in small paddocks. I mean, 2 pigs, something 1,000, 50 by 20. Yeah. 1,000 square yards, every week, for example, move them along, especially if you had some kind of rough ground, some trees or something like that. Or you could put those couple of pigs in a deep bedded, non-stationary shed. No, it doesn't need sides, just a shed roof, and with deep bedding. And when I say deep bedding, I mean deep bedding. It's got to be more than 12 inches deep, with some sort of a carbon. That could be wood chips, sawdust, leaves, corn fodder, junk hay, whatever. But what you're looking for is a carbonaceous diaper that will then offer kind of a compost pile depth or mass, so that there is decomposition. Nature only sanitizes 2 ways: either with rest and sunshine, which is the pasture movement concept, or vibrant decomposition, which is the compost concept. Those are the only 2 ways nature actually practices its own hygiene and sanitation. And so, in some of these very small places, it's actually more sanitary, hygienic, and just efficient to have a stationary, deep bedded system, what I call the carbonaceous diaper, than it is to actually go through and actually be moving the animals around you can cut and carry your lawn clippings, bring them fresh grass, throw them your garden weeds, those sorts of things. One of the nicest systems is actually a stationary chicken structure, coop, with an attached yard that's very, very small, that you can then throw coffee grounds, kitchen scraps, yard waste, and the neighbor stuff in there as well. So you maintain a 12 to 24 inch deep, kind of carbonaceous composting setting, and then that becomes your compost for your garden vegetables next year. And the chickens do the scratching and the pooping and the turning and the aerating and all that. And the rain keeps it damp enough to continue to compost throughout the season, and that's great. What you don't want is a run that turns to dirt. So dirt is your Achilles heel in these small systems, and I emphasize that because a lot of the dirtiest, most unsanitary chicken situations I've ever seen are backyard flocks, where there's a coop, and then there's this little yard, and it just turns into a moonscape of mud puddles when it rains, and dirt and dust when it's dry, and it's manure, it stinks, and it's not hygienic or sanitary. So if you're going to have the chickens out, you either want them to move, or if you have chickens, period, forget the out. Just if you have chickens, you either want them to move every day or two onto fresh ground so they don't tear it up and don't make a moonscape, or you go to the high carbon, deep bedding kind of approach, and then they make your compost for you. And that's one of the most elegant small scale things you can have. You go, we said 5 acres with a cow, or a steer if you want to raise your own beef, or a couple of sheep. 7 sheep are equivalent to 1 cow. So, on 5 acres, you could certainly have a cow, or you could have up to 7 sheep if you'd like lamb more than beef. It's just sheep and goats. So you go to goats, and the problem with goats is you've got to have really, really good fencing. They say if the fence won't hold water, it won't hold a goat. And so the difference between sheep and goats is that goats want to eat 70 to 80% of their diet from above their shoulders. They're browsers. Sheep and cows are grazers. They want to eat 70 to 80% of what they eat. They want to eat it below their shoulders. And so, the problem with sheep is that if you have nice grass and the sheep and the goats are grazers, you turn them into grazers, then you have, prolapsed uteruses, hoof problems, all that stuff, because their feed is too rich, and they want to eat that woodier stuff above their shoulders. So, depending on your situation, if you got a bunch of brambles and briars and honeysuckle and things like that, then certainly goats would be a great thing. And then when you finally convert it from junk into nice pasture, then you get rid of the goats and you convert to sheep. The nice thing about a cow is that they're so easy to keep with a single strand of electric fence. So you could, again, you're not going to give that cow the whole 5 acres. You're going to give that cow, maybe something, 10 yards by 10 yards every day, and you're going to move that cow along. Preferably, you've got 2, so they have a companion, and you move. They don't have to be the same size. One could be one can be a finisher, and one can be a yearling. So you can have one every year if you're doing beef, or a milk cow, so you can have a calf. But anyway, you're gonna put them in these little using a portable, mobile electric fence. You're gonna move them along in these little paddocks, and that way you give the rest in the sunshine, and you'll get 3 times as much production as you would if you just turn them out onto the 3 or 4 acres or whatever and just let them graze. Because then they just eat the grass down and the grass can never go through its rapid growth phase. During the rest cycle, it stays very short because they keep nipping it, and the grass can never get out of first gear.
You just reminded me of another anecdote. I have to chime in on this. When we visited Isle Royale National Park, which is the eye of the wolf's head of Lake Superior. If you picture Lake Superior shaped like a wolf's head, the eye is Isle Royale. And you can take a launch boat out there, and a national forest ranger will take you on, a national park ranger will take you on this walking explanatory tour. I'll explain. And as you're going along through the fairly clear and open forest, you may catch a glimpse of a mother and child moose, as we did. But at one point, you'll pass a fenced area with a 12-foot high hurricane fence or chain link fence around, I can't remember if it's 100 yards by 100 yards or 200 yards by 200 yards. Anyway, it's completely impenetrable, thick forest in there. And she said, "What do you think this is?" And we looked at it, nobody could figure it out. She said, "This is a moose exclosure." We wanted to see what this natural ecosystem would do if the moose were not able to graze on it. So they actually built a fence on a very designated area to keep the moose out.
Yeah, they made an exclosure rather than an enclosure.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. And so the grazing, well managed grazing. I like to call it pruning, because grazing now has a bad connotation. It's not a politically correct thing. So I like to call it pruning, because pruning tends to people, that's a good thing. And so pruning actually has tremendous, ecological and overall biomass accumulation benefits. And so if you run your little homestead with those principles in mind, it can be, extremely productive. It won't stink. You won't have a fly problem. And if you run, so one of the big things with chickens, just to mention chickens, is the problem with familiarity. So chickens are very home oriented, nest oriented. They're looking for familiarity. And when you if you only have 5 acres or 1 acre, they will range over the whole place. Well, what happens then is, if you let them free range every day, it's very vulnerable to predation. You're going to lose them to aerial predators for sure. But number 2 is they will pick a place of familiarity that might not be the coop that you want them to live in. And the place of familiarity is generally, the lawnmower handle, the porch swing back, and of course, wherever a chicken becomes familiar, she leaves a calling card, and so I love the benefit of chickens. I mean, like on our farm, we literally don't have ticks. We just don't have ticks here. If you go to any other farm in the area, they're full of ticks. And we don't have them because we have these chickens, and they run around. We have them in the egg mobile, but we have a couple hundred acres, and so we can move them far enough every day so that they don't get familiar enough with the outbuildings and the barn and the garage and the porch swing to want to come back there. And so a hybrid system for a very small place like your 1 acre or your 5 acres is to keep the chickens cooped up and let them out 1 day a week, preferably 1 day a week, kind of when you're going to be there, and you can watch for aerial predators and things and kind of be on guard. And then the chickens will cover the whole acreage. They'll de-tick it and take care of slugs and snails and crickets and grasshoppers and all sorts of issues. So they'll perform all the beauties. They even eat mice. They'll pocket gophers in California. I mean, chickens will eat those things. And so you can get all the benefits that these omnivorous chickens can offer, but by only allowing them to free range out and cover your place 1 day a week, they're not going to get familiar enough in that 1 day a week to be enticed to go, roost and live somewhere else. Not going to be an Easter egg hunt.
Wow, you becoming a chicken psychologist in order to be a good husbandman. Wow, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, that's chicken psychology. And so you want the benefits, but you don't want the liabilities. That's the bottom line.
Wow, this is fascinating. I know we're running up against time, and I think you've already given us plenty of no pun intended food for thought. We think we better have you back on a fairly regular basis as this year develops, because it looks like this is going to be something that remains important for people to be making specific action plans around and taking action steps soon, starting now-ish, if they haven't already, to shore up their stored food, which you've talked about before, a larder, to shore up their close relationship with local high-integrity food producers, if they haven't already, and to start producing their own if they can find any way to do it. And you've given us lots of ways. We'll also include in the description of this video links to some of the other interviews we've done that will help augment what you've said tonight. And golly, just thank you always, because you always bring kind of this wit and wisdom, this sort of a positive take on something that can be a very concerning matter for people. It's a very serious topic, but it's important to take it with a light heart and to keep putting one foot in front of the other. And you've done that yourself. You've shown others how to do it, and you're here helping us figure out how to do it. So Joel Salatin, co-founder of Polyface Farms, just remind people how they can find out more about your operation.
Yeah, well, so we have a website, Polyface Farms. If you just Google in POLY, it'll probably pop up, polyfacefarms.com. And there's everything there from you could, a shameless plug. We ship nationwide. So if you don't know where to turn and you just need to start somewhere, we're glad to ship to you. We ship every Tuesday of the week, and you can get it. We have lots of information there. You can see my travel schedule, where I'm speaking. We have a lot of educational resources, instructional things. We have an instructional video series, a curriculum that we're working on. We're up to about 25 hours of content and trying to add, about 10 hours a year. We just started that, a year and a half ago. So, and I've written 15 books. So, you're welcome to get those as well. And we're all about trying to disentangle from the increasingly vulnerable and fragile system.
Well, thank you on behalf of all of our viewers here at Liberty and Finance for being here with us throughout the years, and thanks for being in our corner. We really need families really need the help of knowing how they're going to take care of their families in this shifting environment, this shifting landscape that we're faced with. And you're a big part of that for us. So thank you, Joel.
Thank you, Don. Again, it's a real pleasure to be with you, always.
Miles Franklin Precious Metals is one of America's oldest and most trusted bullion dealers. Miles Franklin is A+ rated and accredited by the Better Business Bureau, licensed and bonded, and has 0 complaints ever registered. Here at Liberty and Finance, we are licensed brokers with Miles Franklin. To order, simply call us, discuss your needs, and we will let you know our live inventory, prices, and availability, and lock in your order over the phone. Once your order is locked, the price is held for you regardless of market fluctuations, and the metals are reserved for you awaiting your settled payment. Within 1 business day of ordering, you will receive an email invoice detailing the order and payment instructions. Miles Franklin accepts payments by bank wire, ACH or electronic check, money order, check mailed priority mail, and cryptocurrency. The fastest forms of payment are bank wire and cryptocurrency. Upon settled payment, metals will ship out within 3 to 5 business days. You will receive tracking information via email. Domestic shipping charges are $15 for any order under 500 ounces of silver or 10 ounces of gold. For orders larger than that, domestic shipping is free. The package will be double boxed, fully insured, and labeled discreetly, with no indication of the contents inside. For your privacy, the name Miles Franklin will not even be on the package. To talk to myself, Elijah, my brother Kaiser, or my father Dunnigan, call 1-888-81-LIBERTY. That's 1-888-815-4237.